You are leaving because I cheated. You know you are nothing without me. You'll come crawling back.
You really believe I can't survive without you?
I know you can't.
This marriage is over.
I know you will crawl back.
Then I suppose we'll find out.
Get me the owner, now. Richard Bennett slammed his room key onto the marble reception desk. Several guests turned. The receptionist stiffened. Sir, I've already explained that. I didn't ask for another explanation. Richard leaned closer. I'm paying nearly $4,000 a night for that villa. If this is how you treat important guests, your owner needs to hear about it. Vanessa touched his arm. Richard, everyone's staring. Let them. The resort manager approached quickly. Mr. Bennett, is there a problem? Richard straightened his jacket. Finally, someone with authority. The manager maintained his smile. How can I help? I want to speak to the owner. That won't be necessary. I'll decide what's necessary. Richard lowered his voice. I have 12 investors arriving tomorrow. If our meeting goes well, there could be millions of dollars involved. So either get your owner down here, or I'll move the entire meeting somewhere else. The manager studied him for a moment. Then he said something that wiped the arrogance from Richard's face. Our owner already knows you're here. Richard frowned. Then tell him to come down. Here. What? The owner is a woman. Richard gave a dismissive shrug. Fine. Tell her. Behind him, Vanessa had stopped listening. She was staring at a photograph mounted beside the elevators. A ribbon-cutting ceremony. Executives stood outside the resort, smiling for cameras. At the center was a woman Vanessa recognized. Her face went pale. Richard, not now. Richard, look. He turned. Vanessa pointed at the photograph. Richard followed her finger and froze. No. He walked toward it, closer. His eyes widened. Standing beneath the resort's golden logo was Claire Bennett, his ex-wife, the woman he had divorced 3 years earlier, the woman he had once looked directly in the eyes and told, "You'll come crawling back." Richard stared at the photograph. What is she doing there? The manager answered from behind him. Mrs. Bennett. Richard slowly turned. The manager smiled. She owns the resort. 3 years earlier, Richard Bennett had been absolutely certain Claire couldn't survive without him. After 24 years of marriage, he believed he understood his wife completely. Claire was quiet, dependable, passionate. For most of their marriage, she had stayed outside the spotlight while Richard built an impressive career in hospitality. At least that was how Richard told the story. The truth was different. When they were young, they had almost nothing. One evening, sitting on the floor of their tiny apartment because they couldn't afford a dining table, Richard had held Claire's hand. One day he told her, I'm going to run some of the best hotels in this country. Claire smiled. I know. You really believe that? I believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And she proved it. When Richard struggled with his first hotel budget, Claire fixed it. When occupancy dropped at a property he managed, Claire spent nights studying the numbers. Your weekend packages are too expensive, she told him once. Richard frowned. My boss approved them. And your guests aren't booking them. So what would you do? Claire pulled a sheet toward herself. Bundle breakfast with late checkout. Make couples feel like they're buying an experience instead of a room. Richard tried it. Bookings increased. His boss congratulated him. Richard came home carrying champagne. You're a genius, Claire laughed. We're a team. We always will be. For years they were. Then Richard started climbing. Better positions. Bigger bonuses. Luxury cars. A larger home. People started calling him a visionary. And somewhere along the way, Richard stopped saying, we. At a dinner party years later, one of his colleagues smiled at Claire. Richard talks about hotels constantly. What do you do, Claire? Claire opened her mouth. Richard answered first. She keeps me organized. Everyone laughed. Claire forced a smile. On the drive home, she stared through the passenger window. Richard noticed. What's wrong? Nothing. Claire. She turned toward him. You told them I keep you organized. Well, you do. I helped prepare the proposal that got you promoted. Richard sighed. Are we really doing this? Doing what? Keeping score. Claire stared at him. I wasn't keeping score. Then why are you upset? Because sometimes I wonder if you even remember who I was before I became your wife. Richard shook his head. You're being dramatic. That sentence stayed with her. So did dozens that followed. Years passed. Richard came home later. His phone developed a password. Business trips became more frequent. And Vanessa Cole's name began appearing everywhere. She's working on the Miami project, Richard explained. At 11:30 at night? She works late. So do perfume counters, apparently. Richard glared at Claire. What's that supposed to mean? I can smell her perfume on your jacket. Silence. Richard grabbed the jacket. You're imagining things. Claire wanted to believe him. Then one Tuesday evening, Richard left his tablet on the kitchen counter. It lit up. Claire wasn't searching. She didn't need to. The message appeared across the screen. Vanessa, I hate waiting for you to finally choose. Claire stared at those words until the screen went dark. When Richard returned home, she was sitting at the kitchen table. The tablet rested between them. Richard stopped. Claire, how long? He said nothing. How long, Richard? Can we talk about this calmly? She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Calmly? That's not what I meant. 6 months? He looked away. Her voice cracked. A year? Claire. A year? 14 months. The answer seemed to empty the room. Claire covered her mouth. 14 months. Birthdays. Christmas. Their anniversary. All of it. Do you love her? Richard sat opposite her. I don't know. That's a lie. Things between us haven't been good for a long time. Claire stared at him. So you cheated because our marriage wasn't exciting enough? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Richard rubbed his forehead. Vanessa understands where I'm going. Claire blinked. Where you're going. My ambitions. My career. The life I want. And I don't? You've become comfortable, Claire. That hurt more than the affair. She leaned forward. Who stayed awake helping you prepare your first regional presentation? Richard said nothing. Who found the pricing mistake that nearly cost you your job in Chicago? Claire don't. Who put her own career aside when the children were young because you said your opportunity couldn't wait? I worked for this family too. And I never said you didn't. Her voice finally rose. I'm asking when you decided everything I contributed stopped counting. Richard stood. This is exactly why we can't talk anymore. Claire stared at him in disbelief. He was making her the problem. Even now. She slowly removed her wedding ring. What happens now? Richard looked at the ring. We separate. And me? What about you? What exactly do you think happens to me after 24 years? His expression softened, but not with compassion, with pity. You'll be angry for a while. Claire's eyes narrowed. Richard continued. Then reality will set in. You haven't had a real career in years. You've gotten used to this house, this lifestyle. Claire couldn't believe what she was hearing. You think I stayed because of your money? I think you've forgotten what the real world is like. She stood. And if I leave? Richard gave a small laugh. You'll come crawling back. The room became completely silent. Claire looked at the man she had loved for more than half her life. Then she placed her ring on the table. I suppose we'll find out. Richard expected tears, calls, angry messages, maybe even a desperate attempt at reconciliation. Instead, Claire packed one suitcase. At the front door, Richard watched her. You don't have to make this dramatic. Claire turned. I'm not. Where are you going? I don't know yet. Exactly. That smugness returned. You haven't thought this through. Claire gripped the suitcase handle. You know what's strange, Richard? What? For years, I thought losing you would be the worst thing that could happen to me. She opened the door. Now I'm wondering if staying would have been worse. She left. Her new apartment had one bedroom, bare walls, and a refrigerator that hummed loudly at night. On her first evening alone, Claire sat on the floor eating takeout from the carton. Then she cried. Not because she wanted Richard back, because 24 years had ended, and she didn't know who she was without them. Her phone rang. Claire almost ignored it. Then she saw the name. Eleanor Whitmore. She answered. Eleanor? Claire, I heard. Claire closed her eyes. News travels fast. In Richard's circles, faster than champagne. Despite herself, Claire smiled. Then Eleanor's voice became serious. I need someone. For what? My investment group is reviewing several distressed hospitality properties. Claire frowned. I think you've called the wrong person. No, I've called exactly the right person. I haven't worked professionally in hospitality for 20 years. Eleanor paused. No, Claire. You've worked in hospitality for 20 years. Claire said nothing. You just weren't being paid. 3 weeks later, Claire walked into Eleanor's office. 6 months later, she was analyzing hotel acquisitions. A year later, investors were asking for her opinion before committing millions. Richard knew none of it. Then, one rainy afternoon, Eleanor placed a thick folder on Claire's desk. "What's this?" "A disaster." Claire opened it. Inside were photographs of a magnificent coastal resort, oceanfront villas, private beach, spa, restaurants, conference facilities. It looked spectacular. Then Claire reached the financial statements. Her smile disappeared. "How bad?" Eleanor leaned back. "Bad enough that everyone else walked away." Claire kept reading. "Debt, falling occupancy, terrible management, millions in loss." "How much are they asking?" Eleanor told her. Claire looked up sharply. "You're considering buying this?" "No." Eleanor leaned forward. "I'm asking whether you are." Claire laughed. Then she realized Eleanor wasn't joking. "I couldn't possibly buy this. Not alone. Even with investors, it's too risky." "Maybe." Eleanor stood. "But you saw something in those numbers." Claire looked back at the file. Eleanor smiled. "I saw your face." Claire slowly turned another page. The resort wasn't dying because nobody wanted it. It was dying because nobody understood who should want it. And suddenly, Claire knew exactly how to save it. What she didn't know was that 3 years later, Richard Bennett would walk through its doors, believing it belonged to someone else. And by the time he discovered the truth, his own future would depend on the woman he once said couldn't survive without him. If Claire's journey has you hooked already, like the video and subscribe because Richard hasn't even discovered the most painful part yet. And tell us in the comments, if someone told you that you'd come crawling back, would you prove them wrong or simply disappear and let your success answer for you? Claire spent the entire night studying the resort's numbers. At 7 the next morning, Eleanor walked into the office and found her in the same chair. "You went home, right?" Claire shook her head. Eleanor placed a coffee beside her. "So?" Claire turned the laptop around. "The resort doesn't need saving." Eleanor frowned. "You've seen the debt?" "Yes." "The occupancy?" "Yes." "Then what am I missing?" Claire pointed at the screen. "They're selling luxury to the wrong people." She explained her plan. "Stop competing for young weekend travelers. Target affluent older couples, wellness retreats, milestone anniversaries, executive conferences, and multi-generational families. Reduce unnecessary services. Rebuild the restaurants. Retain the best employees. Turn the resort from a place people visited once into somewhere they wanted to return to every year." Eleanor listened quietly. When Claire finished, she asked, "How certain are you?" Claire hesitated. "I'm not." Eleanor smiled. "Good." "Good? People who are certain around this much money usually lose it." Then Eleanor slid another document toward her. "If we do this, I want you invested." Claire stared at the number. "It would require a huge portion of her divorce settlement. This is almost everything I have." "I know. If it fails, you start again." Claire looked out the window. For 24 years, she'd helped Richard take risks. Now she had to decide whether she believed enough in herself to take one. She picked up the pen. "Where do I sign?" The first year nearly broke her. Renovations went over budget. A contractor quit. 2 senior managers resigned. Then a storm damaged part of the beachfront restaurant weeks before reopening. One evening, Eleanor found Claire alone inside the unfinished lobby. "You can still walk away." Claire stared at the construction dust. "Is that what you want?" "No." "Then why say it?" "Because I need to know you're staying for the right reason." Claire looked at her. "I spent half my life building something with a man who eventually decided I contributed nothing." Her eyes filled. "I'm not walking away from the first thing I've built for myself." The resort reopened. Slowly, bookings came. Then they came faster. Anniversary packages sold out. Corporate retreats doubled. Guests returned with children and grandchildren. Within 2 years, the property was profitable. Claire reinvested. When another investor wanted out, she bought more shares. Then another. Eventually, Claire became the controlling owner. The latest valuation placed the resort at $68 million. Yet there were no magazine covers with Claire posing beside the pool. No social media posts aimed at Richard. She simply worked until one Monday morning, her assistant entered her office. "Claire? You know Richard Bennett, right?" Claire's fingers stopped over her keyboard. "Why?" "He's arriving Thursday." Claire slowly looked up. "For what?" "Presidential villa. 4 nights. He's bringing investors for the expansion presentation." Claire stared at the reservation. Richard, Vanessa, 12 executives, all coming to her resort. Her assistant noticed her expression. Should I move the meeting? No. Should I tell him? Claire closed the laptop. No. Thursday afternoon, Richard's car pulled beneath the resort entrance. He stepped out and looked toward the ocean. Vanessa smiled. This is incredible. Richard adjusted his jacket. Enjoy it. If tomorrow goes well, we'll be doing developments like this ourselves. Neither noticed Claire watching from an upstairs window. She hadn't seen Richard in almost 3 years. He looked older, but the confidence hadn't changed. Claire stepped away. I don't want special treatment, she told the general manager. He's a guest. That might have been the end of it. But Richard was still Richard. That evening, a scheduling misunderstanding delayed access to a private conference room. Richard marched to reception. Get me the owner. Now. The receptionist apologized. Richard became louder. I have investors arriving tomorrow. Do you understand how much business I'm bringing into this place? Vanessa whispered. Richard, stop. No. People only fix problems when you make them uncomfortable. The manager arrived. Richard demanded the owner. Our owner already knows you're here. Then tell him to come down. Here. Richard frowned. What? The owner is a woman. Behind him, Vanessa suddenly whispered. Richard. She was staring at a photograph beside the elevators. Claire, ribbon in hand, standing beside Eleanor. Richard approached the photograph. What is she doing there? The manager looked confused. Mrs. Bennett? Yes. She owns the resort. Richard laughed. Actually laughed. No, she doesn't. Richard, Vanessa whispered. She can't. The manager's expression hardened. I assure you, sir, she does. Richard stared at Claire's photograph again. Then toward the elevators. I want to see her. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened on the executive floor. Richard walked out quickly. Vanessa followed. Maybe we should leave. Why? Because this is obviously more complicated than you told me. Richard stopped. What does that mean? You said Claire didn't work. She didn't. Vanessa pointed downstairs. Women who don't work don't usually own $68 million resorts. Richard's face tightened. Stay here. He entered Claire's office without knocking. She was standing beside the windows. Claire? She turned. For several seconds, neither spoke. Richard looked around. What are you doing here? Working. Working as what? Claire almost smiled. Before she could answer, the general manager entered carrying documents. Miss Bennett, the acquisition agreements need your signature before tomorrow's investor meeting. He placed them on her desk and left. Richard stared at the papers, then at Claire. What's going on? Which part? This place. What about it? He said you own it. I do. Richard shook his head. No. Claire remained silent. How? Investment. With what money? My money? You don't have that kind of money. Claire's expression changed. You haven't known what I have for 3 years. Richard walked toward the window. The resort stretched beneath him. You own all this? Controlling interest. How much is it worth? Claire hesitated. Approximately $68 million. Richard slowly sat down. $68 million? Yes. He stared at her. When did this happen? While I was crawling back. Richard looked down. For the first time, Claire saw embarrassment replace arrogance. Then something else struck him. My meeting tomorrow. Claire said nothing. Richard stood. The investors chose this resort. Yes. Why? They're considering a partnership with our ownership group for 2 new properties. His face drained. Our? I'll be sitting in tomorrow's meeting. Richard stared at her. You're evaluating my proposal? Along with 5 other people. Did you arrange this? No. Claire. You requested this resort, Richard. That silenced him. He had walked into her world completely by accident. Vanessa appeared in the doorway. Richard. He turned. She looked between them. So it's true? Claire answered calmly. Yes. Vanessa's expression hardened not toward Claire, but toward Richard. You told me she had nothing. Vanessa. Not now. You said she depended on you. I said not now. Claire looked away. She didn't need to humiliate him. He was doing it himself. The following morning, Richard presented to the investment committee. Claire sat halfway down the table. He stumbled twice. The man who once commanded every room kept glancing toward the woman he'd dismissed. Afterward, Claire remained professional. Thank you, Richard. The committee will review the proposal. That evening, he found her alone on the terrace. Can we talk? Claire nodded. Richard stood beside her. I owe you an apology. For which part? He winced. All of it. Claire waited. I convinced myself I built everything. His voice weakened. It was easier than admitting how much I depended on you. Claire's eyes became wet. She had waited years to hear that. Strangely, it didn't feel as satisfying as she'd imagined. Richard continued. I was cruel. Yes. I was arrogant. Yes. And I was wrong about you. Claire finally turned toward him. No, Richard. He frowned. You were wrong about yourself. What does that mean? You thought my strength came from standing beside you. She shook her head. It didn't. Richard swallowed. Are you happy? Claire looked across the glowing resort. Yes. Without me? Claire almost laughed. That question is still about you. Richard looked away. After a long silence, he said, Do you ever think about us? Of course. Then maybe. Claire's expression stopped him. Maybe what? He struggled. Maybe we could have dinner sometime. Talk. See if there's anything left. 3 years earlier, those words might have been everything Claire wanted. Now they weren't. Richard, I didn't build this so you'd want me back. I know. No, I don't think you do. She stepped closer. I built it because I finally wanted my life back. Richard's eyes filled. Claire touched his arm gently. I forgive you. Hope flashed across his face. Then Claire finished. But forgiveness isn't an invitation. She walked away. The next morning, Richard checked out quietly. Claire watched his car from her office for only a moment before returning to work. The investment committee eventually approved Richard's proposal, but on its merits, not because of their history. Claire refused to become the kind of person who used power to punish someone simply because she could. That was her final victory. Richard had predicted she would crawl back because he couldn't imagine a version of Claire that didn't revolve around him. But Claire hadn't merely survived. She had rediscovered the woman she'd abandoned years earlier. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's becoming so fulfilled that their regret no longer matters. 3 years earlier, Richard had said, You'll come crawling back. In the end, someone did come back. It just wasn't Claire. If you were in Claire's position, would you have forgiven Richard, or would you have made sure he lost that business deal? Tell us in the comments. And if Claire's comeback had you smiling, hit the like button and subscribe, because there are more stories about betrayal, second chances, and people discovering far too late that they underestimated the wrong person. And remember, sometimes the person who walks away with one suitcase isn't the person who lost everything. Sometimes they're the person who finally became free.